Welcome to Corporate R and IR 4.0 Corporate Media House. Today we are going to discuss customer services in the hospitality domain. And for that, we have Mr. Augustus Wee joining us from Singapore today. And he is one of the most talented trainer in the industry. He has been educated and experienced in the same domain. He has been working for last 15 to 20 years in the industry, and he's very well versed with hospitality, F&B, and the training processes and part and parcel of the process. We welcome you, Mr. Augustus.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you for being here. So today we'll be posing the questions. I hope you can answer them for us, for the audience.
I'll do my best.
Sure. So, can you tell us about some of the key strategies as traditional hospitality businesses are suffering post-COVID, and there are like asset-light models that has been there. Just for an example, Airbnb is there. So, just to remain competitive and meet the expectations of consumers, like they have been affected by and influenced by asset-light models. So, what strategies can they apply to be in the competition?
Okay, for these questions is because traditionally the hospitality business is very much an extensive and labor intensive industry. The capital investment definitely is outweigh what models like Airbnb can do. What we can do, however, is that we need to build a very dynamic service culture that is sensitive to changes and development around us, both internally and externally. And as for to be able to understand what is going on the ground, we need to connect in terms of our partners, and then also with the market that we are serving at the moment. Right.
Definitely. So that's one of the key areas where actually the competition can take edge, right? So,
Correct. I would say that will be the foundation itself that will actually makes a very big difference. You can have the best product, you can have the best delivery system, but that does not mean other people can't do it. So your competitors can actually match you or even exceed you in those areas. However, your service culture, your service providers that you have on the ground, that makes a very big difference to how we age out the competition.
definitely. So you see now we are in the world of IR 4.0. The revolution has been done so very fast and rapidly. And you see new technologies, smart technologies are coming up the way. Hospitality is not what it was 15 years ago, right? So what are the new smart technologies that can be utilized to make the hospitality business more friendly, more technology savvy?
Okay, I will look at it in two approach actually. One is more of the internally, and then the next one is to look externally. Now, for internally, what we will again split up into two areas, which is the front of the house and the back of the house. Now, back of the house, we can actually adopt a lot of technologies because of the development in many different industries. Like, for example, in the cleaning and also the maintenance industry itself, that has actually helped a lot in terms of how we approach our so-called cleanliness standards in the industry itself. Like for example, before COVID, right, a lot of things was done based on the standard that visually, when we look at it, we know that it's clean, it's good enough. But after the COVID, we realized that a lot of things have to change. So a lot of industry has actually collaborated with outsourced partners to actually work on how to actually make the cleaning more microscopically clean in that sense. Maintenance, of course, there are also areas where we look at how can we reduce the amount of work to be done in terms of replacement, in terms of repair, because these are the areas where we need to make sure that a lot of things are, because they are being used all the time by people, and different people, when they use it for short term, they don't really take care of it as much as a person who is using it for long term. So in the maintenance department, they have to be very on the dot on in terms of how they clear, so-called maintain the systems and the things around us. And of course, the staff have to come into play in terms of all these technologies being approached. Now, in the front of the house, we are looking at how we are going to manage information about the customer, about their preferences. This is the main thing, whether you're talking about front office, you're talking about F&B, or even in the event or banquet that we deal with. And here we need to have a system that actually be able to analyze the data that is being brought in, so that we can actually provide the appropriate solutions that will actually satisfy the customer. So this is talking about internally in terms of the front of the house and the back of the house. Now, externally, what we need to do is actually look at what our partners are. That means the supply chain itself that brought in all our resources that we are going to look at, like, for example, the raw material for our food, our setup for our events, and also for the rooms services that we provide in terms of the guest rooms itself. At the same time, so we need to make sure that our guest service journey that is being mapped for every one of our customers are aligned with our supply chain. So that in the moment when we understand there is a shift in terms of what the customer wants, right, we know how to adjust our supply chain accordingly. So the supply chain also must be as dynamic. So our network with our partners in terms of the supply, the resources itself must be very strong, must be one that we can actually so-called control and manage over it very agilely in that sense. Yes.
So connecting the internal and external process is a must, right? Interconnectivity with
Yes, that
ordering, yeah, streamlining
exactly. That
the
that is one of the very important point, right?
definitely. But you see,
Yeah.
we are dealing with people as it's the customer industry, right? And to foster different kind of cultures in an organization is really important. If the organization is not intact, then we are going to lose the customer at the end of the day. So, in your opinion,
Of
can you
course.
tell what are the most important and exceptional factors that the management should apply, even the top management and the executives, to keep the customer and the culture as a foster point?
Okay. For that to maintain a exceptional customer service, right? One of the key thing I would say is actually the organization service culture and framework that's how we build on for the hospitality industry. The service culture, we are looking at how we behave with our colleagues, our customer, our service provider, and even the general public. And this is part of the framework itself that we need to develop right from day one, not when we already got our customer. Is before even our first customer steps in, we need to build that culture first. And in that culture itself, one of the key thing is about a common service language that we need to have, that we can communicate across to every single person, whether you're talking about the colleagues, the service provider, the general public, or even our customer. So in this service language itself, they need to know what exactly we can offer them, what we can do for them, when we can do for them, and how we're going to do it for them. So having that means that we also connect ourselves with the customer, knowing what they want, what they don't want, and what they need at the present moment. And from there, right, all these things can help us to build a so-called exceptional customer service. Of course, the leadership itself also very important. A service leadership is going to be one that is not only going to help guide all these things in the framework, but it has to also be very transformational in the sense that it has to make sure that things, when it changes, the leadership must change along with it so that you can consistently bring back the customer because they know we are there for them. And of course, this will link up to everything in terms of the service partners, and also, right, this will help us to keep our ears on the ground all the time. So this framework is very important in the service industry.
Following that framework, that brings me to the point that can you provide the factors actually that leads to customer loyalty in the industry?
Okay, in terms of customer loyalty in the industry, one of the key thing is, again, right, going back to our framework that we have talked about, it has to be very customer centric in a sense. That means everything that we do, right, whether we are talking about even a simple things like hiring a staff, the uniform, the color of the lobby, right, all these things is focused on the customer. Now, the thing that we are going to continuously be able to create that satisfaction and loyalty with the customer is about knowing our environment. Now, when I talk about environment, I'm not talking about only in terms of the surrounding around alone, but also the people, the market that we are in, the resources that comes that where it comes from. Like for example, if you are in F&B, you have food that you are coming that is being imported from different countries sometimes, especially like in Singapore, where most of our things are all imported. We need to understand the source, what happened at the source itself, so that we know that when there's any changes at the source, we need to know how to adjust, and then our partners network will help us to make this adjustment very clearly. And of course, at the end of the day, when you have your product and you don't have your customer, then it doesn't work also. So our customer service journey, from the moment we have our first contact with them till the moment they leave us, right? We need to be able to manage every single step our so-called contact with them. So all these things will come together to build that satisfaction and also the loyalty with the customer.
That's really great. Actually, now coming to this point, when you have to keep all of this intact, how do you actually ensure that they are properly trained and equipped with top-notch customer services? How does actually a company can handle negative feedbacks or customer complaints? So what steps actually they'll be taking to resolve these kind of issues and train their staff properly?
Okay, I would say is that in the framework that we are talking about, right, one of the key things is also about learning and development. So the organizational learning and development system itself must be very dynamic to be able to adjust according to what the needs at the moment. So, like for example, when in the 80s and the 90s, when we were doing our training, right, is very much different from what we are doing right now. Long time ago, we can actually talk about very I would say less so-called vast changes with the customer, because they are all coming from certain location only. They do not come from a vast so-called different so-called lifestyle, different so-called demographics that they are from. But nowadays, our demographic cuts across a lot of places, and so our learning culture must continuously be dynamic and be able to adjust accordingly. And at the same time, the training itself cannot be one where we talk about, when we talk about classrooms, it's no longer like what what we do in a school where we can sit down for a couple of hours and do the training. It has to be very much what we call a micro learning or a bite-sized approach, where the person, if they have a time, let's say for example, half an hour to an hour on their hand, they must be able to tap into the system and learn something from there that is going to help them in delivering their service at the counter to the customer. And of course, this kind of learning is continuous. It's not something where we say that, oh, we when we are bought into a company, when we go in and learn something, and then straight away we can actually go in there and say we know everything. There's no such thing, because the environment is changing, the people are changing, the customer are changing. So we need to continuously learn new things. And so this system that we are talking about must be able to adapt to all these kind of changes and continuously change and improve so that these people, the customer, right, know that the company is doing things for them at the same time, right?
Yeah, change is the key element over here. Adapting to the
Yes,
change, right? So,
correct.
can you just tell me, right, some of the effective trainings processes in design, development, and delivery, and an example where you have actually implemented that in the past? So, how actually you measure the effectiveness of that training program and the metrics that you use to actually know that this is going well?
Okay, in terms of the design and development itself, the main thing is about understanding what our current performance is. Now, in terms of any organization, we are not looking at training alone, but also opportunity for them to learn in other environment. Like for example, in a real life situation where they are given things like, for example, empowerment to do work, and how are they going to use this empowerment? What are the responsibility they have, right? So this is an example of how we can actually look at it. So in the analysis itself is one of the first tools that we use to actually determine whether we should put in a training program or should we put in an opportunity program for them to develop. And in the development process itself, it should be one where we adopt what we call the agile approach. In the agile approach, we do not develop the whole system together, but we develop things by what is the need at the moment. So that need itself is the one that we will actually look at how we can design a so-called a development or training for the staff themselves. And of course, the continuous monitoring of it is the one that is going to help us determine how we can actually, are we doing well? Where are we right now? How we can improve on it? Things like, for example, customer feedback is very important. We have to keep our ears on the ground to know what the social media is telling us. And also at the same time, we also listen to our staff, because it's not always what the management thinks is 100%, because sometimes the management do not actually come in contact with the customer as much as the staff themselves. So they know the customer better, in fact. They may not understand it, but they know them. So listen to the staff. The staff will give you a lot of feedback that will help you to grow and also to develop in the right direction.
Definitely. That's the key to listen to your staff also. And they are the
Yes,
pillars that your business is standing on. You
correct.
see, right now, like work culture has changed. Now we are not sitting in an office space adapted to our laptops or computers. Now it's the time we are working remotely, and hybrid culture is there. And those office spaces are not existing anymore. People want to reduce rent. They want different options and opinions to actually work, right? And hospitals, hospitality industry is one of the areas. Do you think how they can actually repurpose their spaces, their rooms as the workspaces, which can be utilized by people in business? They can come and utilize the hospitality business spaces as workspaces also.
I think this is a very big step for the industry, because what we have is, like I said again, we are still very assets extensive and labor intensive kind of industry. To change that, it will take some time, but there are certain departments or areas in the hospitality organization we can actually make adjustment to. Like for example, in terms of the housekeeping department, many organizations have actually looked at things like, for example, outsourcing part of the business for people who are more specialized in the area of the cleaning itself, the specific cleaning. they also look at things like, for example, maybe they can actually hire someone in the position of so-called coordination in a hybrid work environment and arrangement where they can actually not only work directly in the office, where maybe on certain days they should come in, but on certain days they can actually work from home. So a person who is like, for example, a mother who is having kids who are going to school, right? They can still be connected with the industry if they were from the industry before, so they can actually work in those kind of environment. And this doesn't only look at housekeeping alone. Even in maintenance, we also need to have someone in the role of a coordination. They can actually work in this hybrid model. Now, for the front of the house, it might be a little bit more challenging. Front services like, for example, at the counter, unless we are going into a environment where we are looking at very little staff contact, which I would say is that fits into the Airbnb model better than a hospitality, because in hospitality we are looking at the human connection. We're looking at the human relationship that we are building on. So unless we are going to decide as an industry on the whole to move away from that direction, I would say is that building a 100% hybrid work culture is not possible, but there can be certain arrangement for certain areas. Yes, that is possible, right?
Thank you so much, Augustus, for answering all our questions and for giving your valuable time
Sure,
to us. Thank you so much.
no problem.